Right, I am about to hit live. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting in just a second. Do let us know if our mics are sounding okay, if all the audio is balanced, and all that stuff. Dan, say hello so they can hear your audio.
No, they will not hear me.
Okay. Well, there you are. Do you have a thing of the week this week, Dan, or are we going to skip that segment?
What was the thing of the week? I don't think I have a thing of the week. Meetings.
Meetings, yeah. Everything sounds great. Brilliant. All right.
Add up. Let me get the show notes ready. Okay. I guess I'm ready.
Cool. I'm now recording.
I'm now recording too. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 292 for November 18th, 2022. Hey everyone, Daniel Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast. We got a lot to go through this week, including, of course, Windows 11 news, because there's always Windows 11 news, but nothing too huge this week. Luckily, not a lot of controversies either. Zach got his hands on the Surface Pro 9 and Laptop 5, two devices I still have not reviewed because apparently my life is just meetings these days. But I swear, I'll get them done soon. Xbox Keystone news. Apparently, we're finding out why Xbox Keystone is not happening. And if you're curious as to what Xbox Keystone even is, we'll, of course, explain that as well. The RTX 4080 from NVIDIA has officially launched. I have one. I'm using it in my computer right now, and I'm going through the review of that too. But I'll tell you what I think about it and how good it is compared to the 3080 Ti, which is what I was upgrading from. The TLDR, it's really, really awesome. And it's a big boy, but they did a nice design on it. Also, Qualcomm. So the Qualcomm Summit the Snapdragon Summit, I should say, is happening this week in Hawaii. I did not attend, which I'm actually glad. I don't like flying to Hawaii. It's way too long. But they did announce, of course, new phone processors. But there was also the name Orion, but with a Y, because they got to be clever. What is Orion? Well, it relates to Windows, so we'll get to that. Plus, we got an exclusive interview, which you'll definitely want to tune into, speaking with someone from Qualcomm. Actually, I should tell you who it is. We will be talking to who is that? Sorry, I'm bringing it up now. Kedar Kondap, Senior Vice President and General Manager for Compute and Gaming at Qualcomm. So we'll talk about Windows on ARM and all sorts of things there. Don't worry, I ask questions. I don't get answers to everything, but I do ask the good ones. And we'll see if we come up with a thing of the week. If not, we'll just, go to Q&A with the audience. Zach, how are you doing on this Fine Friday?
I am not too bad. Been a relatively busy week. We're all preparing for Black Friday and whatnot. But yeah, I've been pretty good. How are you?
Busy. I'm ready for the weekend. Yeah, next
Yeah.
weekend, of course, will be even. Well, it's gonna be a rough weekend next for
Yeah, we
those,
should say we're not doing a show next Friday. We're going to be too busy doing other things.
right.
So the show return on December what day would it? December 2nd for a normal episode, but no episode next week. We'll be back the week after.
Yep. Next week is Thanksgiving in the United States,
Yes.
followed by Black Friday, the worst day of the year.
Yeah.
um, Although it's good for the website, but there will be a ton of deals. You'll want to go to Windows Central. Actually, if you go to Windows Central right now, we have a bunch of live blogs running on deals. And these are all things, obviously, that our audience would be interested in purchasing, whether it's the RTX 4080, laptops, gaming laptops, PCs and accessories, and things from the Microsoft Store, including Surface devices.
Yeah.
Those are all up now, and more will be coming. We'll also be, of course, covering Amazon and Walmart stuff too. I'm putting aside some money because I need to get probably some dog things,
Boring
which
adult
is
stuff.
always fun. Yeah, more adult stuff. Yeah, lights for the house or something.
Yeah.
which I'll get to eventually. But anyway, let's get to the big news here, I guess, with Windows 11. So it'll give us an update on what happened this week in terms of those insider builds.
Yeah, so it literally just came out half an hour ago, so I've not really had time to play with it. I had to hand off this changelog to our news editor to get it up on the website. But build 25247 is now out in the Insider Dev channel. Now, a majority of this build is just it catching up to the beta channel, which got a handful of features, I want to say last week or the week before last. It was, so this build includes access to Windows Studio Effects from the quick settings panel. That was a beta channel feature, which has been, I guess, forward ported to the dev channel, which is really nice. Energy recommendations in the settings app, which will give you 4 or 5 different things that you can do to make your PC more energy efficient. That was in the beta channel, now brought forward to the dev channel. Task manager improvements, including the search bar and the app independent theme. Again, brought forward from the beta channel, now in the dev channel. And then we also have, now here's the exclusive stuff to the dev channel. New suggested action. So the suggested action menu is getting an additional feature. So previously you could copy dates and phone numbers, and what that would do is when you copied that, a little menu would pop up giving you suggested actions. For example, if you copied a number, it'd be like, would you like to add this to your contacts? Would you like to phone this number in Skype or Teams? If it was a date, it would suggest, Outlook Calendar or the Windows Calendar app to add to your calendar as an event. They're now adding... what is it? And then adding an edge one. So now you can search text. So when you search copy any text, a little option will pop up saying search copy text in Edge. And so that's pretty nice, just making it more useful. That's still like US only, I think, which is ridiculous. But there you are. Updates to your cloud storage in settings for Windows 11. They are now going to show you how much storage you have left within the settings app and allow you to upgrade your storage straight from the Windows settings app, which is kind of cool. Start menu, they are adding more ads to the start menu, which sounds worse than it actually is. What they're going to start doing is start recommending websites that are common. I don't know if that's common to you or common to the world, but in the screenshot they've got there, in the recommended feed, they have the 2 top ones being a common website recommended, Etsy and Twitter. So we'll see how long that Twitter one lasts. But yeah, so you can maybe see those as ads, or you can maybe see those as personalized recommendations. I'm not too sure. So yeah, it says, for the first phase, we will recommend common websites based on your region or browsing history to help you easily get back to the websites you care about. This can be controlled by right-clicking on a website and choosing to remove that website individually, or to stop showing all recommended websites entirely. So you can disable it. It's not something that you're forced to use. And as always, with most of these new features, only some insiders will see this experience. And if you do, please share your feedback. So A/B testing, as is the norm within the Windows Insider program, and only the Windows Insider program. No other massive operating system beta program does A/B testing like Windows does. But hey, there you are. Taskbar system updates. They're now adding the ability to show seconds in the system tray clock. Now, this is a classic taskbar feature that was, in previous versions of Windows. It, like many other features of the taskbar, were taken away with Windows 11 because they rebuilt it from the ground up. And slowly but surely, they're adding back those features that people are asking for. And this week, we are now getting seconds in the system tray clock. Albacore on Twitter, who is often diving into these builds and finding unannounced features, also spotted that they're also working on the ability to never combine app icons, which again was a Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10 feature, which was removed in Windows 11. But it does look like they're working on bringing that back. For those who don't know, never combine was introduced in Windows 7, as Windows 7 introduced what they were calling at the time the super bar, which was the new taskbar, which would group the same app under one icon. Lots of people didn't like that at first, so they added the never combine feature, which would allow you to separate the apps and show app tiles, like Windows XP and Windows Vista did. But yeah, Windows 11 hasn't, up until now at least, allowed you to do that. It sounds like they're bringing back never combine app titles. Doesn't appear to be on its way yet, but maybe they'll do that in the future. Something to keep an eye on. And they've also made performance improvements that will allow more files and content on your PC to show up as search results in the Windows search box. So there you are. And that's basically all the notable stuff. Everything else is just fixes and all of that good stuff. So there are a handful of notable stuff in this build today, which is nice to see. Half of it was obviously just stuff that was in the beta channel being brought forward to the dev channel. But hopefully we'll see lots of the new stuff in the dev channel here ported back to the beta channel very soon. That's kind of how Windows development's working right now. The dev channel and beta channel are basically serving the same release, which is, of course, moments on top of Windows 11 version 22H2. That is the sort of way forward for Windows 11 in 2023. Just moment updates upon moment updates. The next one I continue to hear is scheduled for February 2023, and that should include the updated taskbar for tablets, which minimizes and whatnot, among a few other things. I'm assuming this new task manager, which we just talked about with the search box, and all of that other fancy stuff. So there we are. That is everything new with Windows 11 this week. Dan, are you doing anything with the Insider program right now?
Nothing.
Good. Okay.
I have no idea what's going on with it. Yeah, like I said, I tuned out from that stuff a while ago. So, and I just have too many devices right now that I'm supposed to be reviewing that I can't put the beta channel on, or dev channel even. I mean, I do have old Surfaces, but the problem is sometimes I won't turn them on for months. And so then it's just like, I don't know what's going to happen. But maybe I'll eventually put it on.
I will say, because of how they do it now, the beta channel is pretty safe. It is basically just cumulative updates with some experimental features, but they're not going to give you features that don't work. Like, it's not that bad. So
so there's no instability issues.
Yeah, I have everything in beta channel because it's so easy now. Like, there's almost no reason to be in the dev channel unless you are like desperate to have access to the new features at the earliest point, which isn't even true always. Like, the beta channel got new features before the dev channel the last few weeks. So I guess maybe the dev channel is only really good if you're really interested in like kernel level platform changes, which isn't really going on right now. I'm sure they are, but then there's nothing notable in the change logs anyway. But if you're only interested in the features, I think the beta channel is honestly a better choice because the updates are smaller, they install quicker, and they're less likely to hose your system. So go to the beta channel, everybody. I recommend it.
Yeah, I'll probably end up putting it on, maybe I'll do that tonight, put it on Surface Studio, Laptop Studio rather. That'll be kind of fun to try it out there. So, and hopefully it should work. But we'll see. Speaking of Surface, I guess that's a nice segue to Surface Pro 9 and Laptop 5. We should point out you got the Intel version of the Pro 9 versus the ARM version, which I'm still using and, will be writing up. There's not a lot to say about it. I mean, it runs well. It gets about, I would say, probably 3 hours extra battery life compared to Intel. Obviously, the performance is not as good as Intel, but it's good enough for what I usually need to do on it. I like the ATX Gen 3. I've said before, it's a massive upgrade over the Gen 2. Is it enough for everyone? Probably not, and that's the issue with 12th gen, which this is your first 12th gen laptop, right?
Yeah, it is.
And so, 12th gen, the problem is with, Qualcomm, which we'll talk about, a little bit more later, but this is trying to catch up to a moving train. And Intel's 12th gen just has such a massive performance jump as well, that it makes comparing the two just like a little bit more, if like Intel stayed at around 11th gen, the difference between that and the Surface Pro 9 5G with the ARM chip wouldn't be that drastic. But when you go to the Intel version, it is kind of a bigger jump because you're getting more cores. But tell us about your experience with both those devices. Also, what color did you get for the Laptop 5?
I got the silver one, the boring old default silver
one. Wow.
Well,
so Zach is getting these from... Yeah, he's getting these from UKPR.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, they sent the 15-inch, which I prefer the 15-inch because it's not Alcantara.
I mean, they don't send the Alcantara for reviews anyway, so.
Yeah, but I prefer the 15-inch anyway for some reason. But we'll start with the Pro 9. I've only had these since yesterday afternoon, so I've not really had a good chance to run them through their paces yet. We will obviously benchmark the Intel one and include the Intel benchmarks within the Pro 9 review that Dan's doing, just to compare them. But so far, my impressions are, I've heard the fan on this already. So that's probably a big difference between this and the 5G one that you've got, Dan. Since the 5G one is fanless, you're not going to hear that fan. I have already heard this fan spin up a couple of times, especially when Windows updates.
Windows updates.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when you always will hear the fan. And it's not a great out-of-box experience because Windows always needs to do updates. And so, like, kind of your first experience is like you hear the fans. That said, their fans are quiet. Like, it's more just like air pushing,
They're not offensive, but it was certainly the first thing I sort of noticed. Oh yeah, they're the fans. I guess that's one of the big differences between this and the 5G one is it has a fan in it. So
And this is
so
the
far,
i7.
this is the i7, 16 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs storage. Performance, based on my very brief use of it, has been perfectly fine. No issues so far. The only thing, and I think everybody's said this, is the battery life on this does not seem to be that great. I was, just doing of course, the out-of-box setup experience will be a little bit more draining on the battery life than normal usage.
Right.
But I went from about, I think, 80% to 50% in what felt like an hour, maybe, which isn't great. But of course, that's Windows Update doing its thing, the Microsoft Store doing its thing, and installing programs and whatnot. So far, I do like the design changes. Now, from a distance, it doesn't look any different from the Pro 8, but there are some notable differences versus the Pro 8 specifically. That being, of course, the buttons are in a different place. We've talked about that before. The button's now at the top versus the volume rocker being on the left and the power button on the right, or vice versa. The ports are on the other side, of course, as well now. But the other thing I've noticed is that there's no antenna strip. There's no plastic antenna strip. That's gone from the top here. It's now just one bit of aluminium or aluminum. And I was thinking at this, I was going, so where is the antenna? Like, every Surface has a cutout for antennas, like a plastic bit for the antennas. And then I realized it's in the buttons. The buttons are plastic. That's where the antennas are now. It has to be, because there's nowhere else. Oops, I just hit my mic. There's nowhere else for them to be. So that's really cool that they've done that. They've hidden the antennas, the Wi-Fi antennas in the power buttons. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if they've publicly said that or not, but I'm guessing that's where they are, because I don't know where else they'd be otherwise. And yeah, you don't get any of the studio effects. That's the one thing that I'm kind of disappointed about with this device, is that all of those awesome AI effects that they were hyping up with the 5G version are just not applicable to the Intel version, which is because the Intel version doesn't have an NPU. That said, NPUs aren't exclusive to ARM, right? Microsoft were saying, other vendors can, if they want to, include NPUs.
Intel has, they're working on NPUs as well.
Yeah. So maybe the Pro 10 will have an NPU in the Intel one. Who knows?
It's interesting, too, because I don't know. So the whole studio effects, they're very impressive with the ARM device, obviously. And it's one of the best camera experiences you can get for, video conferencing, which is great for the 5G version, of course. That said, I'm not sure. Well, let me rephrase this. I have Intel devices, like ones from HP, that have the similar features. Now, HP built them out, and so it uses HP's software, but it's accessing hardware that Intel has made available to them. And so it does the same stuff. It'll blur your background. It'll, sharpen the image, or it'll auto track you as you move around. It'll do tone for your skin. Like, it brightens the image. Like, it does all of that. It does it quite well. Now, it's not relying on an NPU, so it's a little bit more CPU intensive, and that's sort of the difference in that sense, that the point of an NPU is it's completely dedicated to AI functions. It's optimized for that, and it doesn't tax the battery as much, whereas currently without an NPU, you can make the central processing unit do that work, but it's more of a brute force approach. Plus, if you're doing something else, you're losing those cores. On the ARM device, those cores, the main central processor, is still able to do whatever it needs to do while the NPU is doing the other stuff. So it's a nice separation, gives better battery life, and it won't degrade your overall performance if you're doing other stuff. Now, I don't know why Microsoft, in Windows 11 sort of made it the way they have. I think they could have done that with Intel too if they wanted to. So I don't know, but maybe it's because they're just, no, this is an NPU exclusive feature. You have to have that in order to get these studio effects. But yeah.
So I guess the last impressions I have of the Pro 9 is that the kickstand does feel a little bit nicer than the Pro 8 one. I'm not sure, that could just be variation in the production line, but this one feels a little bit smoother. I felt like the Pro 8 one was kind of a little bit stiff. This one feels a little, I guess, looser is the wrong term, but it just feels smoother to use, which is kind of nice. And yeah, so far I do like it. Again, I've never been a huge fan of the Surface Pro form factor as a whole. I'm just not a huge fan of the tablet and then the floppy keyboard. I do prefer a traditional sort of laptop, which is why I am sort of leaning more towards the Laptop 5. And I do like the 15-inch. I might be in the minority when I say that, but I prefer the 15-inch Surface laptop. I've said it ever since the laptop 3. The only thing I wish they would improve, and they haven't, is I wish they'd add a bigger battery to it. All that extra space, and they don't add a bigger battery compared to the 13-inch. And I think it's a real shame. But my impressions of the laptop 5 are very positive. If you've used the laptop 3 or a 4, it's basically identical. And that's fine. Yeah. The design is still very minimalist and clean, and I'd argue very modern. The only thing that I think may be aging it slightly are the bezels at this point. But if you use dark mode and like a dark wallpaper and stuff, you can kind of get around it, and it's okay. I do wish it had 120 hertz. That's the one thing I'm noticing going from my laptop studio and the Pro 9 to this thing. Is the 60 hertz display is very sad, and they should update that as soon as possible. I don't know why they didn't. Like, that's such an easy upgrade to make.
There's two reasons. One is it impacts battery life. And
a bigger battery wouldn't matter.
Right. And there's also sort of differences in usage. So whereas the Surface Pro 9, you're going to be using the pen and inking, and artists will use it. It makes a little bit more sense. Same thing with Laptop Studio, another inking creator device. They're saying with the inking and everything, you benefit from the 120 hertz. Whereas on laptop, you're not getting it's a straight up laptop, right? It has a touch screen, but and technically you can use the pen on it, but no one's doing that, right? So they have sort of different usage scenarios, and you want it just because the animations look smoother. But that's literally the only benefit you're getting from this. It's just the aesthetics look smoother. Yeah. And is that worth the extra price? They're gonna have to somehow factor in that, and the degradation in battery life. Probably not. So that's kind of why. But as the technology improves and comes down in price, I'm sure we'd see it gravitate to other devices.
Yeah, it's a real shame, because obviously I use the Laptop Studio full time now, but I like the Laptop Studio, but it doesn't. It's not a super sexy laptop in my opinion. It's a very unique looking laptop, but I don't think it's a slick looking laptop. It's a very thick boy. And it's a unique looking thing. And obviously the screen pulling forward is nice. Not that I use it. And it just, using the laptop 5, this 15-inch version, just makes me wish they did a laptop Pro. I'd love a version of this with, a flagship display with a dedicated graphics card of some kind. It doesn't have to be a full-blown sort of gaming graphics card, but just something a little bit more than integrated graphics would be awesome. Just so I could render video on it, which I know you can technically do with the Iris Xe in here, but just so maybe like an NVIDIA MX sort of line of graphics cards or something like that would be really awesome in a device like this, because it's thinner and it's just slicker, and it's more like a MacBook Air competitor, which I really like the MacBook Air. When I look at the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air, I like the look of the MacBook Air more. But of course, that's the lower powered one and has only the 60 hertz display. So I look at the MacBook Air and I'm like, if only they made that one, but with like a 120 hertz display with a better processor and GPU, that'd be great. I'm looking at the Laptop 5 and I'm thinking the exact same. Just make a slightly beefier version in the same chassis, and I would buy that over the Laptop Studio any day of the week. Fortunately, they don't make that.
I get the point about the MX processors, but I will say those are pretty much done. Because
I just meant something like that.
Yeah, I get it. I know. I'm just saying because the Iris Xe chips have basically outpaced the MX processors now, so it doesn't make sense. But I get the point with a lower end.
Maybe a 3050 or something lower. Can you get lower than a 3050? I don't know.
I don't. Oh, well, you can go back to the 2000 series, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And
even
you would
that
still
would
get
be
a benefit.
Yeah. Yeah, so,
but then it gets into the marketing, and then it's like, why are you putting in a really old? I don't know. It's complicated.
Sure. So I guess the last thing I'll say about the Laptop 5 is the keyboard feels different, and I believe they noted that the keyboard was quieter, but that does make it feel different. If you compare this to a Laptop 4 or Laptop 3, the keyboard on nose feels a little bit more clicky, whereas on this, I haven't got a better way to describe it other than saying it feels mushier, which sounds bad. But it's not. It's just different, and describing it as mushier is the only way I can sort of describe it to you. But yeah, it doesn't feel like a horrible keyboard. It feels lovely to type on. So you sort of glide through it. But it certainly feels a bit different than the Laptop 4 and the Laptop 3. So that's something to keep in mind. It's quieter as a result, but the tactility of it is certainly a little bit different. But yeah, that's basically my impressions of the Laptop 5 and the Pro 4 after one day of having them in the house, and I really do like them. They are refinements on a design that they've been using for a while now. Obviously, the Pro 9 design is a riff on the Pro X design from 2019. The laptop 5 is a riff on the laptop 1's design from 2017. So these are, tried and tested designs that have proven successful, and these are just minor improvements on top of that, and I think it works, and they're really awesome. But next, like I said, thinner bezels for the laptop 5, maybe a Pro version in the future. Those are the only real complaints I have with it. Otherwise, the trackpad should be a haptic touchpad. Again, I know why they didn't do it, because of pricing and but that's why the Pro version needs to exist.
Yeah, haptic would be nice. You didn't mention Thunderbolt 4, but
I'm not
that's there too. That's because
benefits from that.
Yeah, Thunderbolt 4 is like, some people really do need it, right? If you're doing external displays and everything, it's going to be, you can do dual 4K 60s now and all that. And I have a Thunderbolt portable drive made by Dell that's pretty awesome. Like if you're transferring like large amounts of like files, especially like photos and everything or video, having a Thunderbolt drive is really a nice experience. But yeah, if you don't use any of that stuff, then the Thunderbolt 4, you'll never even notice it. But it's good that it's there now, at least.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, Zach. Thank you for sharing that. Of course, hopefully we'll have more on that, both of these devices, which aren't that exciting, but they're still, I want to try the Surface Pro 9.
They're still really good products.
I love the new, the updated design of the Surface Pro. I'm a big fan of that device, and I think they just keep improving it. But yeah, you mentioned battery life with Intel. That's something I've been hammering for a while too. It's like the 12th gen stuff is just not really optimized for battery life. At most, you'll break even compared to 11th gen, but even that's sort of like, what's happening is a lot of OEMs are sort of slipping in slightly larger batteries, which then gives you parity battery life to 11th gen, but we're certainly not gaining battery life. But the trade-off is when it comes to performance, the 12th gen just blows away 11th gen. I mean, it's not even close. So a 12th gen processor has a lot of potential. All right, let's turn to Xbox Keystone. Even I missed this news, but I guess first, let's not assume everybody knows what Keystone is, but explain what the rumor originally was and what the update was this week.
It's no longer a rumor. It's basically been confirmed by Microsoft. Yeah. Keystone was the code name for a streaming box that the company was working on, an Xbox cloud gaming streaming box. They were working on it, I think, last year, maybe a bit before last year, and they ultimately have cancelled it. Like that was the news earlier this year. They've decided to sort of refocus their efforts, and maybe they'll return to market in the future with another idea for a streaming box. But the actual streaming box known as Keystone isn't currently happening. And this week, Phil Spencer just sort of talks a bit about it, talks about why it was cancelled. And the primary reason was price. He said, word for word, this is a quote from him, "It was more expensive than we wanted it to be. When we actually built it out with the hardware that we had inside. We decided to focus that team's effort on delivering the smart TV streaming app. With Keystone, we're still focused on it and watching when we can get the right cost." So it's not something they've outright cancelled, but which I kind of thought they were. But no, they've not cancelled it. They're just waiting, I guess, for either the components that they're using to come down in price, or they're going to find different components to use to bring it down. And when asked what kind of price they were going for, he said, "I don't want to announce pricing specifically, but I think you have to be somewhere around the $129 or the $99 price brackets for that to make sense in my view. We just weren't there with a controller." So that's the other thing. He wants to include a controller in the box, which is a big ask. If you think about how much is an Xbox controller, $50? Like a standard controller?
On sale. Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
They're not cheap. So to include a controller in the box with a streaming box, that box has to be half the price of $129, and that's a big ask. And so we don't really know what the Keystone device was running. Like, was it running Xbox OS? Like, what chip did it have? Was it an ARM chip? Like, who knows? We don't know any of the specs inside. Was it basically a mini PC? Was it an IoT device running a light version of Linux, some Linux distro that was using the Xbox cloud gaming app for Android or Linux or whatever? We just don't know. If it was running Xbox OS, that's a big deal, because that means it's a Windows device, for one. Two, it's probably an x86 product of some kind. It could be ARM, who knows. But three, it probably runs UWP apps, which means there needs to be a something competent inside there. And that's why I guess the price they were going for, they just couldn't reach, because if it was like a mini PC, then that's a big ask for $129 or even $99. So they went back to the drawing board. I have a feeling if this thing ever comes out, it will be like a Linux distro-based thing, an IoT device. It won't be a Windows thing, because I think it's just for that price point, I think it's unrealistic.
It can't
And also,
run Windows.
Windows Xbox OS is a lot of overhead for streaming.
Well, it's
Like
three
it's
operating systems, the last I
yeah,
heard. I mean,
exactly. Yeah, it's really not necessary unless they wanted to position the device as not just a streaming box, but an entertainment box for TV apps as well. At which point, then obviously running Xbox OS would make sense because that's already got all of the entertainment apps you'd want, including things like Amazon Prime, Netflix, YouTube. All of the UK channels. I don't know if the US ones have. I'm assuming like HBO Max is on Xbox and whatnot. And I think even Apple TV's on its way. Apple TV's already there, and Apple Music's coming. Spotify's already there. Like all of those entertainment apps are on Xbox, and so having an entertainment streaming box would be kind of cool. But again, it's a lot of overhead to run those apps because it's all Windows. That would be the Windows side of Xbox OS running all those UWP apps. So we'll have to see what happens there. But good to know that they are still hoping to do this at 1.4 around 129. I bet when this is announced, it'll be 149. Which
Maybe.
I don't mind.
We'll
like
see.
if you look at the pricing of it, so the Series X is $499, the Series S is $299, $149 for a streaming box. I think it can be done. I don't think that's too bad.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of challenges. Mass production, got to bring that price down. It's always hard. And I think he's right about the pricing. It has to make sense because consoles, when they go on sale, sometimes drop so low. It's like, well, why don't I just get a full console for like $300?
Yeah.
So,
but that's the thing. Not everybody wants a whole console just to watch YouTube and stream some game. Sometimes, like if the only game you play is one game on a console, should you buy a full console for that, or should you buy a streaming box and then stream that game? Like that, if you have the internet to do it, I don't see why you wouldn't pick that option. Because streaming at this point, if you have the bandwidth, the internet for it, it's almost indistinguishable from a local gameplay. It's faster. You don't have to download the game for one. And the only real thing that I noticed, and this is on a slow internet connection, I've only got like 80 down here, is the bitrate. Like you will notice when you're in dark rooms, for example, you'll notice the bitrate a little bit more than you would if it was running locally. But that's a small price to pay for just instant gameplay. You basically press go and you're playing the game. There's no download process. It's really kind of futuristic and awesome.
Yeah, if you're lame, and I was going to segue into the real gaming stuff. That's the RTX 4080, which came out this week. So this is going to the other extreme, right? So this is going to be, although I guess if you're even more hardcore, you go to the RTX 4090. But we already reviewed that one. So the 4080 came out. It's a little bit cheaper. I believe pricing starts around $1,200. It's not cheap for a GPU, obviously. I mean, we're just talking about a console for $300 and a streaming stick for $130. So this, and you need RAM and a processor. So I'm using DDR5 RAM. I forgot the speed, 4800. It's pretty, maybe even 5600. It might be 5600. It's pretty fast RAM. And I got the Intel 13th gen Core i9 in there. And so putting all this together, look, I have an 850 watt power supply. Technically, this uses less power than the 3080 Ti, which is really interesting. It's so all the reports about the power draw and everything. I think the 4090 that definitely applies to, but the 4080 is technically more efficient than the 3080 Ti, so it uses less power. Yet I believe it's twice as fast. And the other big thing here is the DLSS 3 is now out, and I think it's around 35 games are optimized for it, with more coming online. And so NVIDIA sent me one, and this is the Founders Edition, the card. It's a big boy. Don't get me wrong. I have some photos of it that I threw up on Twitter already that I'll put in the review compared to the 3080 Ti, and it's it's very tall. Let's just say that it's a very thick thing, but they did a really nice job on the design of it. Like, it's elegant looking, it's slick, it's the fan's nice on it, and now it uses like 3 power cables to power it on instead of the 2 that you normally use. But what they did was they ship in the box a cable that goes from 3 to 1, and so you only actually plug in 1 cable into the card itself, and then it's like an extension, and you plug in the other 3 cables. So it makes it a little bit more neat looking, and it makes it more, easier to manage in your case. And so I've been running it. I've been running some DLSS DLSS 3 games, including a special edition of Cyberpunk 2077, which is in beta, although it's coming out soon. I also did the Spider-Man game from Sony that's been revamped and redone, and a few other titles. And listen, I'm not a hardcore gamer, but it doesn't take a genius to see the difference here. It is massive with DLSS 3. I was playing, mind you, I'm on a 32-inch Dell 4K monitor. It's not built for gaming, so it only does 60 hertz. But I was playing Cyberpunk 2077 at 4K, pretty much all the graphics maxed out, and I was hitting easily 60 frames per second. And I think according to NVIDIA's frame rate counter, I would have actually been hitting over 105 frames per second FPS, which is insane. And I posted some screenshots of Spider-Man as well, and that just looked, I mean, it's weird because you're used to seeing like really good graphics in video games during cutscenes, and then when it goes to the actual gameplay, you're like, oh, all right. It's not like that anymore. The big thing with DLSS is it adds, one, it's doing a lot of upscale processing, but then there's also other technology NVIDIA is using that gives like light reflections, and like water on the ground, it's reflective and it's more represents real world how physics occurs, and it makes a big difference in terms of the realism of the game. I posted a photo from Cyberpunk 2077, and it's just like, it looks like a screenshot from a cutscene. And like if you go to my Twitter and you find it, like it's just like, it's so detailed in the shadows and everything, and you'd be like, oh, that must be from like the cutscene or some promo shot. No, and that's gameplay. Like you walk around, and that's like, you can go up to like in games now where they have like a bulletin board, and you can like read what's on if the game developers did that. I was playing Gears of War 5, and I was able to go up to like newspaper stands, and like you could just like read this stuff now. It's truly insane. I don't know. I thought it would be a while before we got to 4K gaming, going way above, 60 frames, 60 FPS, 100 and 100. You could obviously do 120 if you bring the graphics down slightly. But like, I threw Doom on here, and everything was just maxed out to hardcore in terms of the graphics, and it was just like flying. So it's a big jump. It's bigger than I thought it would be too, because sometimes with these GPUs, it's like the 3000 series was already a pretty big jump. It's like, all right, you expect maybe an iteration, because the 3000 series isn't old. It's not like it came out like 3 years ago. I don't think it was 2 years ago. I think not even. And so it's like the amount of progress they made here is really impressive. And so yeah, if you're a hardcore gamer, getting a 4080 is just going to be like, make your day. Of course, as I mentioned, you'd probably want to pair it with the latest processors, either from AMD or Intel, get really fast RAM, have a really fast SSD. But when you combine all that stuff together, like the load times and everything, it's just a different level of gaming. And yeah, I know console, with the new Xbox, you can do 4K gaming on that as well, but it's not with all the bells and whistles that this thing does in terms of the DLSS and some of the physics that's being done with it. So yeah, kudos to NVIDIA for this release. I think it's going to be, and we already have a live blog, as I mentioned earlier, on the site that covers where you can get the cards, where they're in stock and pricing. And I can tell you that's doing really well on our site. So a lot of people are looking to buy this card for the holiday season. And so, yeah, if you're a hardcore gamer, PC gamer, I think this is the card to get. If you can afford a 4090, by all means, but I think there's, again, now you're almost hitting diminishing returns. Like now we're going to be, how long before we enter 8K gaming? And does that really matter? I don't know. But I think we'll continue just to go to higher FPS, which seems to be never ending. It's like, I guess we'll do 4K at 300 FPS at some point, which is going to be truly astonishing.
Obviously, the next step is 8K gaming.
Well, I just said that. Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's a good job on NVIDIA. It's expensive, no doubt about it, but it's worth it if all you do is game and you really, and then it's also good, obviously, if you're a video editor where you just need anything that uses AI, right? This thing is crushes in terms of performance. And here's a funny thing: as someone who's not a hardcore gamer, I did notice a difference in Windows. Like
Really?
everything is, yeah, oh yeah, everything is just a little bit more zippy when I threw this card in
Yeah,
because of the graphics.
Yeah, one of the big things will be animations. Like if you click on task view, that animation is always laggy on any
Yeah.
laptop or any PC I've used. And I bet it's not with a 4080.
No, no. I mean,
Yeah.
everything on the computer just feels like lightning fast now because,
Yeah.
sure, the Intel 11th or 13th gen i9 is doing a lot with its 24 cores, but you still need a GPU to handle the graphics, and this thing
Yeah.
just like flies through stuff. So, uh, yeah, if you can afford it, by all means. Sarah's asking, is Cyberpunk any fun? Yeah, Cyberpunk's it's a it's gotten very good. And Jez Corden's written a lot about this. You know, it had a rough launch, but it's really turned things around. It's actually become one of the most popular games out there. Obviously, it's a specific genre. It's pretty gritty. Some of
Yeah.
the violence in it and everything is pretty uh, intense. I was going to post one image, but I couldn't because there was like partial nudity and stuff. None of it was a partial nudity. It was a woman on her table with like cut open
Oh
and
yeah, I know what scene you're talking about.
yeah, that scene, right? And
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
was like, it looked amazing though. I want to show because of the detail, but I was just like, wow, this will probably get flagged on Twitter.
Yeah.
So I didn't post that. But yeah, it's a fun game. I think Spider-Man's a little bit more fun, obviously, because you're just the realism in that game in terms of the city and the scale of everything is kind of a lot of fun. Although as I'm swinging around the city, I'm like, this is very inefficient. Like, I mean, it's both efficient, but it's not. It's like it'd be easier if you just flew. But obviously that's
This is what
underpowered.
it would easy if we just flew. Yeah, go on, Spider-Man, learn how to fly.
Yeah, just say I was like swinging. I'm like, wow, this is. I gotta go another 1,000 meters. It's gonna take a few minutes here. Come on, can't we
Funny.
just cut to yeah? But I forgot what other games I put on here, but I didn't load up Flight Simulator yet because that thing is just massive. And the thing
Take
with
four
Flight
days to
Sim,
download.
yeah, and then it takes 4 days to learn how to use it. like
Yeah, that's true.
like the
Yeah.
tutorials themselves are like levels. It's like, all right, you're on tutorial number 8 now. It's like, oh my God. Like I don't have the patience.
Yeah.
I don't have the patience in games for cutscenes. Like I'm like,
You
come on,
skip them.
skip,
Skip.
skip. Yeah, I don't care about the story. Like just show it. There was another game that I was playing that was actually kind of cool. Let's see if I can bring it up in my Steam library here because I already forgot the name of it. Oh, so I have, yeah, Marvel Spider-Man Remastered, Cyberpunk 2077, Doom. Oh, there's Bright Memory: Infinite. I think that's what it is. Bright Memory: Infinite. And that's a Japanese kind of game. But it's kind of got a first-person shooter. You're a female assassin kind of thing. I don't know the whole story because I skipped all the scenes as much as I could. But it's that one has also been optimized for this card already. And there's another one called Fist Forged in Shadow Torch, which
Nice.
I think that's the one I was playing with these weird animals. That's a side scroller 2D. Actually, that one was kind of fun too. So yeah, I'm gonna hopefully get this review posted in the next few days, but and post I'll put all the benchmarks obviously in there and some screenshots from the games. But you can go on my Twitter and check it out if you want to. All right, let's turn to Qualcomm. So as I mentioned earlier, they had the Snapdragon Summit this week, which they do every year around this time. Now we know for a fact that they weren't going to announce, or demonstrate, I should say, the Nuvia processors. That is their next gen ARM chips. Again, Nuvia was a company that was spun off. Well, it wasn't spun off. It was created by ex-Apple engineers, the same ones that developed Apple's A series chips, which then morphed into the M series. That company came out. A lot of people thought that they were just going to kind of exist and then Apple would buy them back and these guys would make money. But what ended up happening was Qualcomm came in and offered $1.4 billion for them, and they got it. And so that was January 2021. And here we are. We knew they weren't going to show off the processors yet, although they are on schedule to get those into OEM hands quite soon for early testing, early samples. And Qualcomm has already reported that they have a lot of interest from OEMs, what they're calling design wins. That is a lot of OEMs, presumably HP, maybe even Dell, hopefully Lenovo as well. I've liked what they've seen so much, they're already committing to it. I should mention, we're just about to post a story on Windows Central 2 from Canalys. I always forget how to pronounce them, the analyst firm. They're saying 2026 is going to be the real big year for ARM on PC, where it may actually start to uh, be the majority, I believe, over x86.
Oh, really?
And
That's
it's
soon?
yeah, they said it's going faster than expected, and Qualcomm has publicly said that they expect 2024 to be a quote inflection point
Yes.
for Windows on ARM, meaning it's going to be 2024, probably late 2024. It's going to be the time we're going to see more mainstream devices hitting the market that are going to be very well received. This is going to be the performance stuff people have been
Yeah.
wanting.
It'll
But
be
we
the
knew,
it will be the M2 M3 equivalent chips that are actually able to trade punches, whereas right now
right.
Apple's punching down on everyone, which is, everyone expects that. That's kind of just how it is. But 2024, especially with the whole Windows 12 stuff or Windows Next Valley, that is all supposed to be one big package where it's like, all right, now we're here, we're in the game, let's go, give it your best,
Yeah.
Apple.
That's the expectations, right? And so there was the rumor last week, I believe we reported about at least one of these chips has 12 cores. It's a desktop chip, but we don't really know if that was, accurate. And it has a similar cache and memory architecture to the M1 series. And I should mention the M2. I know everybody's talking about the M2, but the M2 is not radically different from the M1.
Right.
It's very similar. It's clocked higher. And they did some minor changes to the architecture, but not a ton. But this chip, the performance is supposed to be very good, but we don't know what's compared to. And so we knew all this going into the summit. We also knew that they weren't going to show off the chip and demonstrate it, right? That's going to be, I guarantee you, next November. So tune in next November, 2023. I guarantee they'll show the chip on stage. They'll show it running. We'll get performance numbers and all that. It's going to be the big reveal. But they did have a small announcement. Actually, they had a few announcements, and this is in the interview too, which we talk about. But the big thing was they gave the name for these chips, and they're called Orion, Oryon. So no more Snapdragon. The Snapdragon series will continue to exist, of course. And they may even continue that series for more affordable PCs, but their high-end stuff is going to be called Orion. And I guess they're going to be called, Orion 1, Orion 2. We don't know what their sub-names will be called, obviously, what we're thinking is going to be a line of processors, possibly even ones for desktop. But that is the name. That's all they told us. But that's now we have that to hang our hat on, at least. Moving on, we did get to have Kedar Kondap, who, as I mentioned earlier, is the Senior Vice President and General Manager for Compute and Gaming at Qualcomm, in our interview. And so we're going to play that now for you guys. We talk about the announcements. There was things there about City and Adobe that is super interesting. And we talked a little bit about the future, and I asked him some tough questions I knew he probably couldn't answer, but let's watch it. Hey everyone, I'm here with Kedar Kondap, Senior Vice President and GM for Compute and Gaming at Qualcomm. He's at the Qualcomm Summit right now, which I believe is in Hawaii. So you guys apparently having nice weather where I'm in the cold Northeast, but that's okay. You guys have had a big week, obviously. Lots of news around mobile and phones, AI. We're here, though, to talk about compute, which is also known as computing, laptops, and everything there, and the momentum that Qualcomm has in this space in Windows on ARM, a topic that's dear to me. I've been following it since 2016. I personally use a lot of Windows on ARM devices and have been a big fan since day one. Recently we've had Lenovo ThinkPad X13S, as well as the Surface Pro 9 5G running the new ACX Gen 3 processor. Kedar, so I was wondering, first let's start off, and welcome to the Windows Central podcast, by the way. Let's talk about some of the announcements you folks had this week. So, I'd like to start off the City announcement. I thought was pretty interesting. Apparently, a big partner switching over a lot of their computers to the Qualcomm ones. And I'm curious if you could just give a little bit more details about that news.
Sure. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it. Obviously, we're very excited about what's in store for us with Windows on Snapdragon, and specifically to talk about, excuse me, talk about our partnership with Citi. Um, we are at a pretty interesting point in terms of how devices are being managed today. A lot of the workforce for all the CIOs, it's a very interesting part of how they're managing devices because a lot of the workforce is working hybrid. And so what happens is, you have to go through a lot of change in terms of uh, how you're managing the device because you have employees, some of them that are on site, some of them that are working remote, and some that are obviously working in a hybrid environment. So it gets pretty challenging when you think about it for a CIO because, you're used to doing deployments in a certain manner. So now you want zero touch deployments. You want to have um, uh, remote management, increased reliance, say, for example, on VPNs, because you want to make sure you're catching those bad actors along the way in terms of folks that are not behaving in terms of the way they're using their devices. So our partnership with Citi is just an example of a growing collaboration with the enterprises. And Citi's obviously been a great partner. What they are going to do is lean forward with, they've been testing Windows on Snapdragon for a while now. We've been working with them very closely. And so they will be deploying Windows on Snapdragon devices at scale at Citi. And so a lot of the things I talked about in terms of how we're being able to manage these devices with the CIOs, that's part of the growing collaboration with Citi. So we're pretty excited about what's here to come with them.
And to be clear, the number that was thrown out was 70% of its 300,000 global users. So all those 70% will be switching to Windows on Snapdragon devices.
Yeah, I think I have to go see exactly what they said. But yes, a large
Yeah.
portion of Citi is moving to Windows on Snapdragon. Yes.
That is a lot of people, and seems like a big win, especially. And I know the Lenovo ThinkPad X13s was mentioned specifically as one of those devices, and I've been using that device myself for quite a while. I still have a review to do, but we've had a lot of shakeup at Windows Central recently, so I got to get around to it. But it's been an excellent device. You get that
Awesome.
classic Lenovo ThinkPad experience, of course, but
Then I
now
hope you're
it
using
does.
the one with 5G.
Yes. Oh, of course. Yes. And for me, a laptop, I've been very vocal about this. Laptops for me basically have to have 4G or 5G on them because I have this idea as soon as I leave a house, the laptop is useless unless I have that connection. Yeah, I can tether, but if you're a working professional, tethering is just not nearly as convenient. It's just literally opening the lid and just being online just like that. So I've been a big fan of that device. Also, Adobe was mentioned here. Now, Adobe has been switching some of its apps to, or providing ARM support for a little while now. We already have Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom have been optimized for ARM. I'm curious if you talk a little bit about that partnership. I know the Adobe apps are very complicated, and there's a lot of moving parts in terms of optimizing them from ARM. But I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, the momentum there, and what's happening.
Sure. Then maybe before I just talk about Adobe, I'll just touch on the broader message that we're trying to deliver. And obviously, Adobe is a very strategic and a key partner to us. But when you take a step back and look at what's very important to us with Windows and Snapdragon is we want to drive a very rich user experience. And what that means is we want to make sure that all of the key applications all used daily in our lives are absolutely available. And so we've been partnering very closely with Microsoft on a couple of things, right? We've been partnering with them to make sure that, Satya announced, for example, the dev kit with the Volterra platform, and that is now available to a lot of developers. Microsoft several years announced the 64-bit emulation for ARM. So the way to think about it is there was 64-bit emulation, so you just have apps that are already going to work on Windows and Snapdragon. Then you have the next step, which is porting some of these applications natively to Snapdragon. And then the next step is not just porting the apps natively, but taking advantage of a lot of the heterogeneous computing that we have with Snapdragon. So to focus a little bit now, going back to the Adobe question, our partnership with Adobe is pretty deep. So what Adobe is doing, as you heard from them directly, they are porting a lot of their applications first natively onto Snapdragon, and then we're working very closely with them for Adobe to be able to take advantage of a lot of the NPU and AI that we have in Snapdragon. So when you take advantage of this, I threw out a few numbers yesterday in terms of CPU and GPU improvements relative to even competition. The difference is just start. So the partnership with Adobe is taking one step at a time, porting applications natively, and then taking advantage of AI as well as a lot of those applications. And we want to make sure together with Adobe that we're delivering the best experience.
And to be clear for our audience here, this has been a big advancement, I would say, in technology that we've been hearing a lot more of, which is our neural processing unit. And the concept here, correct me if I'm wrong, is you basically create a separate processor from the main central processor, the main CPU, if you will, and that handles specific tasks, and in this case, AI and doing those kind of things. So right now with Windows 11 and basically Windows on ARM devices, we have the ability to do all those new camera effects and the microphone noise cancellation. The idea here is that that processor is specifically designed to do that stuff without distracting from the main CPU and the tasks doing there, because those tasks can be pretty intensive and the CPU itself wasn't necessarily designed to leverage all that AI. Am I kind of correct in summarizing it that way?
Yeah, that absolutely correct. I'm going to add, if you don't mind, just a little bit more.
Sure.
Just so think of what happened with the GPU, say 10 years ago, right? First, the market many years ago was very much CPU bound. Then, as GPUs evolved, we could do a lot better with terms of very dense UIs, multi-layer UIs. You could do much better rendering on your screens. And similarly, as well as obviously that means playing games and having very complex games that can play more effectively on devices. Similarly, we believe that the next generation, there is a third important metric, as you very correctly pointed out, which is the NPU, and that equates to AI. And so a lot of activities that you run on the NPU will result in a much better user experience. And I know you touched on this important point is at Microsoft's Ignite event, they talked about the Visual Studio effects. And so the way to look at those applications, whether it is simple things like background blur or, we're in this call right now. And, if there's a lot of background noise, all of a sudden, we'll quite often forget to mute or, there's a dog that barks. And just simple things like just removing any of this noise that's not necessary from the system is all super critical. So we're going to deliver that entire experience and run it on the NPU so seamlessly. And so, consumers won't have to know where it's being run, but the NPU is going to turn out to be a very important third metric after CPU and GPU now in over the next several years.
And this also helps with battery life, correct? Which is
Yes.
always a big focus. I know in the ThinkPad X13s, they specifically went with a full HD display, basically to optimize the battery life. And we throw that in with the NPU and a larger battery. It's one of the most long-lasting Windows PCs on the market today, and it's been very good to see that kind of happen. Going forward a little bit, there's also some challenges though. So the Surface Pro 5G, which I have in my possession, has been a fun device to use. But one of the things that separates it from the regular Pro 9 with Intel is it doesn't have Thunderbolt 4. And I'm curious about how Qualcomm, sees that, or how they are thinking about addressing that going forward. Sure, there's USB 4, and I believe Microsoft talked about supporting that, but they didn't get it in time basically for this device. But do you see USB 4 as sort of the alternative here?
I mean, we've always, if you go back with Qualcomm, we thrive on technology and innovating. So, as we start looking at platforms, obviously we've always led the way, especially in phones, and you'll see similar leadership from us in the compute space as well. So we're not shy to embrace whether it's the latest technology in memory or in peripherals or in even process nodes or any of that matter. So in general, yes, you'll see us leading the way with innovation in across the board.
And when it comes to GPUs, you mentioned that earlier and some of the advantages there. Uh, do you see, Qualcomm just going down the route of always doing its own GPUs, or do you see, working with NVIDIA or AMD at some point to support external GPUs or some sort of graphics cards, or do you see these Windows on Snapdragon devices mostly limited to sort of the what was traditionally called the ultrabook range, to thin and lights, long battery life, mobile for mobile workers?
Yeah. Dan, if you think about gaming as a category, right, it's very complex. And the reason why I say that, it's obviously a very important and a growing market. But games vary significantly. You have, for us, gaming is not new. If you look at what we've done with Elite Gaming on mobile, we've led the way with driving innovation in gaming across the mobile industry. In the PC space, games are there's significant range, right? You've got very casual, lightweight games. You've got some more intense games above that. Then you've got some professional games, and then you've got obviously the ESL, the sports league type, professional gaming league. So I think obviously today, the HCX Gen 3 that we've announced is not targeted to be a gaming platform, right? So and we do recognize the fact that building the ecosystem on gaming is important, and we do work very closely. We have the relationship from our mobile pedigree with all the game developers, all the engine folks, and we realize that we need to optimize these things. So definitely a consideration for us as we're looking at what the roadmap will hold for us in the next few generations.
And relating to that, I guess, Microsoft just released its developer kit, which is focused on ARM. Of course, it's running Snapdragon 8cx Gen 3. And it's technically a desktop computer. Do you folks see, ARM and Snapdragon specifically, or Qualcomm, moving into the desktop space? Or, again, are we still strictly looking at laptops?
Yeah. Then I'm going to have to hold that excitement for the future. Let's just say we are looking at everything. We talked about our Qualcomm Orion CPU yesterday, and we are obviously very excited about what the future holds. But just to answer that specific question, I'm going to just hold on to that just for a little bit longer.
No worries. And I guess that's a good segue to what I consider the big news, which is the future of this category. And you mentioned Orion. And I was just wondering if you can kind of summarize that announcement. From what I understand, this is from Qualcomm purchased Nuvia in January 2021, $1.4 billion. It's made up of ex-engineers from Apple who led the design on the A-series chips, and the A-series eventually evolved and morphed into the M-series. And correct me if I'm wrong on any of that. And these are going to be sort of those first kind of processors coming out. I'm just wondering, can you talk about what was announced and what do you see happening with those processors?
Yeah, I think what we announced yesterday is just the Qualcomm Orion CPU, and that we expected to offer elevated performance levels. We didn't quite quote a number, so we're just going to again hold off on providing any more details just for a little bit. In general, though, yeah, we're pretty excited, and I think we also talked about the fact that the Qualcomm Orion CPU will get used across multiple business lines within Qualcomm. So while of course it will be used in compute and PC business, it's not just limited to that. So we will expand, and we're just holding off on providing more details for a little bit longer.
I'm hearing server market when I hear that, but we'll see what you guys announce later on. It's very exciting, though, to see, this space kind of heat up. x86 has been dominating the scene for a very long time. Apple kind of came in and proved no. ARM is a valid and quite capable processor when done right in this space. and Qualcomm is on the forefront when it comes to at least smartphone usage and has been pushing this in the laptop space for quite a few years. I'm just wondering if you just talk about some of the broader messaging that's been going on with Windows on ARM. I still hear people talk about compatibility, and it sort of infers that apps don't run on Windows on ARM, which from my experience is not the case. We could talk about whether apps are optimized for ARM versus, emulation. But do you guys see, a challenge there in terms of messaging and how consumers are going to view this with Windows? Because it can be a little bit confusing. I would say the Surface Pro 9 is the first effort to sort of blend these things together, so it's not really a issue for consumers. But I don't know if you can talk to that a little bit more.
Yeah. And I think there's no doubt, right? If you see, if I were to summarize sort of how we're dealing with it and what we announced yesterday, it was aligned to the messaging that you're highlighting, which is we're leading the way in terms of performance per watt, as well as AI, and using AI as the third important metric with on-device AI. Second, we are working very, very closely with Microsoft. You heard from Microsoft, Aaron Woodman yesterday. The partnership is deep. The partnership is very strong. So the way I think about it is there's fundamental Windows 11 support. You saw the Windows differentiation with Windows 11 2022 release at Build, talking about some of these studio effects and what we're doing together with Microsoft. Then comes the part about applications and ecosystem, which you highlighted. Satya announced the dev kit and Project Volterra. We obviously recognize, there's a lot of legacy application that exists right now, and we are targeting a broad set of applications across consumer, enterprise, entertainment, video. So you heard from Amazon, CrowdStrike, a few others, Zoom yesterday in the keynote. And so we definitely recognize that we have to do it. But just to repeat what I said earlier, and you stated it very, very well, is first step is getting a 64-bit emulation and just getting the apps to just run. Second step is obviously the apps run and they're ported to run natively on Snapdragon. And third is taking advantage of the heterogeneous computing that Snapdragon has to offer, which is, we've got dedicated cores for audio, we've got dedicated cores for video. So beyond just the CPU, GPU, and NPU, there are dedicated cores for each and every function. So, if you're, say, a video app that's, playing some videos or movies and stuff, you have the advantage of running stuff dedicated on the audio block or the video block. And the way to think about where this all leads to is good battery life. So I know it's not just one thing, but it's the architecture, it's the ability to run these apps across different cores on Snapdragon platform. And so this partnership with Microsoft handing out these dev kits is obviously the work we're doing together to make sure that we're aligned. And so Adobe was just another way of endorsement that, yes, the market is moving towards porting stuff to Windows on Snapdragon.
Yeah, that dev kit is certainly interesting because it's been years since Windows on ARM, Windows on Snapdragon was announced, and here we are 2022. Now this dev kit is finally coming out, dedicated hardware. And to recap for our audience, why this is kind of a big deal is up to this point, if you were a developer and you want to develop on ARM, you could kind of wing it and hope it worked, or you'd have to go buy a somewhat expensive device like the Surface Pro X to test your apps on. Now with this device, which is much more affordable because you're not paying for a display and a keyboard and everything, you're just paying for a little, basically a module, a small desktop computer. It makes it much more affordable and easier for developers to build and test apps there. I guess one of the big complaints I hear about with Windows on ARM, at least in terms of adoption, and is going to be Google Chrome. Now, I'm a big fan of Microsoft Edge for somewhat obvious reasons, but I genuinely like Edge. But a lot of users are still on Google Chrome. It's one of the most widely used browsers. And we've known internally they've had builds optimized for ARM. It's not complicated. It runs on their own Chromebooks. Do you folks see momentum or anything breaking through there at this point? And I know you won't say it, but it seems to me at least, and a lot of our audience, that Google is purposely holding back to release an optimized browser. But do you think there's going to be hope there for people who ever want Google Chrome on Windows on ARM?
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment on any specific apps, as you know well. I mean, there's stuff that we work with, a lot of applications under NDA, and we have to wait for them to announce stuff. But obviously, it is important, right? There's no doubt. Chrome is an important browser. We all use it all the time. And yes, Edge is good, but there's a good install base of folks that use Chrome. So yeah, we recognize that. I just can't comment on what their plans are.
No worries. Google is the big gorilla in the room, so hopefully they will come around to Windows on Snapdragon. Before we leave, I guess I'm curious, do you have anything else you would like to talk about specifically when it comes to Snapdragon, Qualcomm, and what you folks are doing with Windows on ARM, and what you see maybe as the future of this category and where it's heading?
Yeah, I think just one thing we didn't touch on is our growing partnership with OEMs. I think you heard, we touched on a lot of the announcements. We touched on the technology aspect. We touched on the application aspect. We touched on enterprise. What we didn't touch on was OEMs. And I think just to make a point there is we are partnering with all the OEMs, and they've talked about it publicly. They have devices that have launched in the market. Obviously, you're using the Surface Pro 9 5G, the Lenovo X13s. These are all pretty incredible devices, and they bring the value proposition of 5G. I mean, I take my Lenovo X13s, I travel globally, and it just works seamlessly. Gone are those days where you're trying to hunt for even if you have a cellular, we'd have to go search for carriers and try to camp on a particular carrier. But now when you just open that device, it just camps on. So you have to experience that 5G connectivity and global perspective to appreciate how good of an experience you can get. So overall, like I said, our OEM partnerships are super strong. Just to tease stuff out, there's more announcements coming soon. So just stay tuned. I think we're definitely looking forward to a lot of these partnerships. And the other thing we've highlighted, which I'll repeat, is we're on track for how we're going to sample our next generation's products, and we're on track with what we're doing. So we're very excited for what's to come.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm excited to see what other OEMs are going to create. I know, so far HP, some of their devices have been really nice. Microsoft, of course, has been there. Lenovo has been there. And so it's going to be kind of fun to see who else comes on board. There are still a few big names that I would like to see kind of add something to this category. Well, I think that about wraps it up for us. We appreciate your time. We know you're pretty busy there. Although, I guess you can go hang out by the pool now in Hawaii and enjoy the fine weather. But as always, Kedar, thanks for joining us and giving us your time here. And we'll love to have you back sometime, as these you folks have further announcements in this space, especially with those Orion CPUs. We'll definitely have to have you on again to talk about that. As I believe I'm quoting here, you folks see in 2024 an inflection point for Windows on ARM, and that's going to be really interesting to see what happens in 2024. So we'll return to this topic, I guess, around that time.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me. Super excited for what's to come, and look forward to continuing these conversations. Thank you.
So, thank you, Qualcomm, for jumping on the podcast and talking about all of your announcements. As Dan said at the end there, 2024 is going to be a super interesting year for Windows on ARM, and hopefully Qualcomm are happy to come back and talk about that closer to the time.
Yeah, definitely. It was nice to have that chat. Obviously, we didn't get all the answers to the questions we wanted. I still think the big thing is that Google Chrome, right? Until that happens, we're going to have issues with Windows on ARM and adoption. No matter how good Edge is, it's just hard to get people to switch over to a new browser. I totally understand that. So that's going to be the challenge. It's up to Google. It's not like that. I heard 2 years ago they had the browser ready and they just won't release it. So that's very frustrating.
Leak it. If you're at Google and you have access to that, just slip me a link. Let me know.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I guess we're going to kind of wrap up the podcast. I guess we could do a thing of the week if you have a thing of the week.
I guess my thing of the week is once again Andor. It's just continuing to be awesome. Like, I'm very shocked at how long this series has been running for. I think it's 12
episodes.
Every other Disney Plus series has been like 8, maybe 10 at max. This is 12 episodes. We're on 11. I think 12 is out next week. and the last, so I've not watched Wednesday's one just gone, but I watched all of them up until last week. The last two, I don't want to give too much away. But the last two were awesome. Like the whole thing with him in the place and all that was just great. I thought it was awesome. And
with him and the thing and the place and the stuff that happened, it was awesome.
It continues to be a Star Wars show that doesn't feel like Star Wars. What I really like about it, I was talking to my girlfriend about this, is like it's the only real spin-off show that doesn't call much attention to the fact that it's a spin-off show. Like, it's set in the Star Wars universe, but Star Wars is merely a backdrop to this other thing going on. Like, sometimes you'll see a stormtrooper walking by, and that's awesome, but it's not, like, shouting at you that, hey, this is Star Wars, here's a stormtrooper, here's the Force, here's all the blaster sounds. It's very much telling its own story, and it just has the dressing of Star Wars. And I really actually like that and appreciate it. And I wish more spin-offs would do that. It's like, it's just cool to be part of the universe. It doesn't have to be selling the idea that it's Star Wars to me. Like, I get it, it's in the universe. Let's just have that as something contextual, as something that exists within it, but it can tell its own story and do its own thing. And that's what this show's been doing really well, I think.
Yeah, and there some of the other episodes coming out, or not episodes, shows coming out kind of do that. So I think it's definitely a smart idea. I mentioned last time that they could do horror as a genre for Star Wars, because there are characters on the outer rim of the universe that are like pretty like frightening kind of characters. Some of them do use like force powers, but there's so much to explore. They can even do the whole origins of the Sith, the actual planet,
totally.
So there's a lot there. I still got to catch up. I think I stopped at episode 4, but I was waiting for my best friend, but then he's like, "Oh, I've been watching it," because he was away. Well, he was away for 2 weeks and like came back. He's like, "Yeah, we were watching." I'm like, "Oh, well, I waited, but okay." So I guess I'll try to power through those this weekend.
Yeah.
I did watch a movie I've been wanting to watch for a very long time because it came out around 2017. It was called The Void. It's a small Canadian film. And I forgot, and I learned after this, there were 2 directors on it, but one of the directors did another movie called PG. What is it for? Gorman. Hold on. It was, PG : Psycho Gorman, which I have no words to explain how awesome this movie was. That movie. So you should go watch that movie. It's like a throwback to 80s type, and it has like a little bit of horror, but it's got comedy. The girl that's in it, the little kid girl, is amazing. She absolutely steals the movie, because she's just like, I'm like, where did they find this girl? Like, I don't know. She's just like so hilarious. But before they did that movie, they did The Void, and The Void's different. The Void is also 80s inspired, but it's straight up horror. And they apparently like raised money on Kickstarter. And okay, so if you're not into horror or into squeamish, you do not want to watch this. I'm okay with horror, but like some of the scenes in this were just like, I was like, wow. And the reason is why it's so cool. If you took Hellraiser and mixed it with The Fly, the newer Fly, and you mixed in The Thing, John Carpenter's one, that's what this movie is. And part of that, all those movies have in common, is the special effects were all real. So they didn't use CGI. If you've seen the original Thing, it's like, well, not the original. Actually, the original Thing is also really good, but the John Carpenter one, the special effects they did in there are all real, and it looks amazing. And of course, The Fly was like that too. So the special effects they did in here were just crazy looking. Some of the creatures that they created, and the story, like, you'll never figure out the story until it gets to the end, kind of thing. But it's a really kind of warped story. It was such a good movie, and the way it ends, it's cool. Like I said, though, it's tough to watch if you're squeamish, because some of the horror in it is pretty horror. But I was just like, I was impressed by it, and this company, Astro, I forgot what it is, Astro something, who makes these movies, they got some real talent there. So yeah, The Void, I give it a thumbs up. And if you want something lighter that's not as horror, that's really funny and bizarre, PG Psycho Gorman is another top recommendation there. So all All right, that does it for me. I guess we'll do Q&A with the audience. Of course, we do this podcast live every week at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time on our YouTube channel, and people can ask us questions and comments there. Unfortunately, you don't get to hear this if you're listening to this recorded, but please feel free to drop by. You can also watch the old video podcast there as well. As Zach mentioned at the beginning, we won't be here next week due to the holiday and Black Friday, but we'll be back the following week, which hopefully there'll be news besides just sales that we can talk about. But as always, you can follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, and follow Zach at ZACBOWDEN. Ask us questions there, leave us feedback, and let us know what you think of Windows and Surface and Xbox and all that cool stuff. Other than that, thanks for watching, listening. Take care, everyone.
Awesome. So yes, if you have any questions, now's the time to ask them. We'll hang around for a few minutes and do our best to give you an answer if you have any.
I should have mentioned, like, the new Fly movie that came out, the one that came out in the, what was that, 80s, late 80s, is really good. But the original Fly is also amazing with Vincent Price. It still has the way a character dies, I'll just say, it still just freaks me out. My mom had me watch it as a kid. It's black and white, right? So it's not like gory, but it's just still like a horrible way to go. And so my mom would like have me watch all these like cool like 50 sci-fi movies, which are amazing, but it stuck with me as a kid. I was like, that's terrible.
Will the Xbox app ever be updated on Surface Duo? If you use the Xbox, are you talking about the Game Pass app? If you use the beta version, it should be fixed now, and it should support dual screens again.
Do you think the Surface Laptop 5 will support Intel Unison? Oh, good question. Like, there's no reason why it couldn't, right? It is going to be 12th gen. It is a premier device, I would say, but so we don't know what Microsoft's thoughts are on Intel Unison. Obviously, it conflicts a bit with their phone link. That said, I don't think they'd be against it, and they work closely with Intel. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. It could absolutely work. Here's the thing, too, with the Intel Unison. My guess is people will find the files and be able to install it kind of on any device, right? It is PC, so it should be able to be hackable, quote unquote. But yeah, we don't have a list yet of computers that will launch with it or get updated with it yet. So that'll be interesting to watch. But yeah, I mean, it could happen. So new Qualcomm chips will probably boost performance 2 times or more in 2024 and improved simulation. Well, we don't know 2 times or more. I mean, it could be even more than that. We really don't know. I think it's going to be a pretty big, significant jump, especially because it's going to have a lot more cores, I presume. And I think you mean emulation. So that's how we've always talked about. There's 2 ways of solving emulation. You can sort of optimize things to run a certain way, which is what Apple's done. And due to limitations on how Windows works, it can't be done on the same way. There's no Rosetta equivalent on Windows. But the other way you could do it is just brute force, right? Just have a very powerful processor that runs apps faster. And yeah, that's probably what's going to happen here. Oh, I will say, yeah, Sarah's going to check out The Void. The acting is not amazing, so just keep that in mind. But it's okay because it's done well, it's directed well, and it's a cool story. So, but yeah, they did it on a shoestring budget, and kudos to them. So. No other questions?
Doesn't look like it. Last call for questions. If there are none, we will head off for the weekend. So get them in now. I've still got to render out that video as audio for the audio version. If I load up Premiere Pro, do you reckon it will crash my laptop?
Are you still using the cloud thing?
No, I use that for the one time. It does work. I need to really sort of nail it in though, because I was having issues with audio echoing and stuff, so I need to get that fixed. So once I get that fixed, we can start using it. But it's super expensive, so I might not hang on to it. Main issue with committing to Windows and ARM now or in the past, performance deterioration gap is huge. Surface Pro X today is performing really poorly at the OS level without even running apps in emulation. That's weird. That shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the Windows 11 runs great on ARM.
Yeah.
It's the least of the problems.
You might need to factory reset. There might be a rogue service running in the background that's making performance poor. I don't know if you have talked about Surface Duo 3 launch, but read 2023, 2024. That's kind of what we've been saying. Late 2023 at the earliest, possibly 2024 if things slip. You know, the current economic market is not looking great. And the Surface team is very timid when it comes to shipping new products that are super expensive that they know are not going to sell particularly well or sell in mass droves, I suppose. And the Surface Duo falls right in line with all of the things that they would ideally not want to ship during a recession. So who knows what's going to happen there? But late 2023, sometime 2024 is the timing we've been saying for the next Surface Duo for, well, since I said the Duo wasn't coming in 2022. And so that remains to be the case as far as I'm aware. Any news on Surface earbuds? Unfortunately not. They were giving them away with every pre-order of the Surface Laptop 5 in the UK recently, which tells me that they are trying to clear stock. So a new version is probably imminent. I would guess maybe spring next year. Next Windows 11 major updates. Moment Update 2 will be February next year. What are your thoughts on Jess's pitch for Microsoft to buy Twitter? Listen, at this point, I want anybody can buy Twitter off Elon. I don't care who it is, just as long as it's given to somebody who actually wants to look after it and make sure it doesn't shut down.
It's quite
obviously Microsoft buying it would be great, but I
think Microsoft would be fine. It would be a good stewardship for it because they're not political. They're they know how to moderate. They already have LinkedIn and they have the technology.
They have Xbox, which is a massive social network in itself. Yeah, they could do it. And
you'd get it free with every Microsoft 365 subscription.
But there's no indication that Elon wants to sell. And even if he did, he'd probably want to sell for... He would want to break even. And I don't think Twitter is worth $44 billion.
And the core talent is gone. So.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It would be a massive undertaking for Microsoft to buy them out and then sort of rebuild, essentially, because they've lost 90% of what made Twitter.
Actually, I'm reading a headline now. Twitter is now stopping people from posting links to rival Mastodon.
Are they really? Jeez Louise. That's just free speech, baby.
Freedom of speech.
You know what? I didn't. You know the whole Elon Musk fanboy thing, which is, I've seen people talk about them, but ever since the last few days, they have been in my mentions a lot. Like, how do they find me?
Weirdos. It's all
a lot of people just defending him. Like, I don't get it. Yeah, he sucks.
It's like 90% weird guys.
Yeah,
who probably have daddy issues.
None of them have their own profile picture.
Right.
They're always using something else. That's a profile picture.
Yeah, those are weird people. I'm going to go simp a billionaire on Twitter. Like, really? That's what you do?
Yeah, billionaire who doesn't know you appreciates your support.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Like, if you're going to do something good in this life, go out and defend the voiceless, the people who actually need people to defend them. You're going around defending a billionaire, like literally the most privileged person on the planet. That's where you're going to put your resources to.
I do love how a lot of people just instantly assume if you have lots of money, you're probably smart. It's just not true. Right. Just because he's got money doesn't mean he knows what he's doing. He clearly doesn't.
Well, that's what people always say. Like, if you make a criticism, they're like, "Well, when you're the richest guy," it's like, "Oh,
Right,
shut the hell up!"
exactly.
You're like, it's like, "Oh, sorry, I can't criticize him because I'm not a billionaire." You gotta get out of here. What is this?
Yeah.
See, we did get talking about Twitter anyway.
Curtis Webb, member for 15 months. You guys are awesome. Thank you, Curtis. Appreciate that very much. I like the little emojis you used there. It's really funny. All right, we need to head off, I think. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back the week after next Friday. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we go live. But until then, we will see you next time.